Since the time the coronavirus pandemic hit us, it's been said that it'll take at least a year, maybe 18 months, for the first human vaccine to be available globally. Now we're being told by a very confident group of researchers at Oxford University that it may not take that long, that the first vaccine could be ready by September and in India by December. So confident are these researchers about the vaccine that they've got their hands on that they've already started mass production. 1 million kits will be ready by December. 100 million doses are to be ready by the end of the year. That's the speed at which they're moving. In just a moment from now, the scientists who are powering this global research will be joining us on the Newstrack. But before that, I want to take you to Oxford University to give you a sense of what's at play, and then we'll try and understand whether this is the ray of hope all of us were waiting for.
The despair, the agony, and the hopelessness caused by coronavirus. All this may end soon thanks to a vaccine. Earlier, it was estimated that it would take at least 12 to 18 months to make one. But the Jenner Institute and Oxford Vaccine Group in the UK, led by Professor Sarah Gilbert, believes the world can expect a large amount of this magic vaccine called Chadox One by September of this year.
We might have a result by, say, September.
These scientists are so confident that they have already started manufacturing 1 million doses, all at risk of a trial.
We have started at risk manufacturing this vaccine, not just at the smallish scale that Kath Green described, but with a network of manufacturers, as many as 7 in different places around the world. We have 3 manufacturing partners in the UK, 2 in continental Europe, 1 in India, and 1 in China.
You heard that right. And United Kingdom is all set to begin vaccine trials on humans from April 22nd.
The team have accelerated that trials process, working with the regulator, the MHRA, who have been absolutely brilliant. And as a result, I can announce that the vaccine from the Oxford project will be trialled in people from this Thursday.
And the manufacturing process has already started at 7 places, including India. Chadox One is only the 4th vaccine candidate in the world, but with the fast test trial process, the others need 2 doses with a gap spanning more than a month and require longer test span due to safety issues. The lead researcher of the project, Professor Sarah Gilbert, insists that the drug is capable of inducing a strong immune response.
So disease X is the name given to the unknown disease that was going to come and cause a pandemic at some time in the future, and we needed to plan for it and be ready for it when it comes. So obviously we didn't know what type of organism disease X was going to be, but we were putting plans in place to be able to go quickly when something that appeared to be disease X popped up. With the vaccine technology, the Chadox One technology, already 12 clinical trials have been conducted against different diseases, and more than 330 people have been vaccinated with Chadox One based vaccines. Across the world, more than 6,000 people have been vaccinated with vaccines using a very similar technology. And this means we know a lot about this type of vaccination now. We consistently see very good vaccine safety and very strong immune responses after a single vaccination, whereas some other vaccine technologies, such as RNA vaccines and DNA vaccines, which we've been hearing about recently, usually need 2 or more doses to work well.
The trial will be completed in 3 back-to-back and sometimes simultaneous phases, and the manufacturing will continue at the same time. If successful, the first batch of 1 million doses is expected to be ready by September.
I have a high degree of confidence, this is my view, because I've worked with this technology a lot, and I've worked on the MERS vaccine trials, and I've seen what that can do, and I think it has a very strong chance of working.
The researchers at Oxford have put millions of dollars on the line by opting to enter manufacturing before the trial results. For them, it's a risk worth taking.
So That's what that's based on.
Professor Gilbert and her team are fully confident of ending this pandemic once and for all. With Ankit Kumar, Bureau Report, India Today.
Joining me live from Oxfordshire in the United Kingdom, Adriene Hill. He's a vaccinologist, director of the Jenner Institute, professor of human genetics at the University of Oxford, and the man who could save us all if his vaccine is indeed ready for human consumption by September. And his Indian partner is Adar Poonawalla, who owns and runs the Serum Institute in India, and he will help bring this vaccine to scale and to the market. But I first want to go across to Professor Adriene Hill. Professor Hill, welcome. You know, this is actually the best piece of news we've put out on the Newstrack for weeks now. Can you give us a sense of your project, what you've been doing, and what makes you confident that by September you will have approvals and that human beings can officially start taking your vaccine? Welcome, Professor Hill.
Well, several vaccines are in clinical trials at the moment. Our own vaccine here from Oxford University is starting in the clinic tomorrow. And many things need to be tested in clinical trials, whether the vaccine is safe, whether it produces an immune response that lasts for long enough, and most importantly, what degree of protection it can provide to people who are vaccinated. Now, we hope to find out what protection our vaccine will offer over the next several months, targeting maybe August or September to know that. And after that, of course, we have the challenge of providing enough vaccine so that this very important public health tool can be deployed very widely.
There seems to be a high level of confidence in the team that's pushing this vaccine. You are parallelly producing 1 million doses to be ready by September, 100 million doses to be ready by the end of the year, while the human trials are still going on. If the human trials fail, all that effort goes away. So what gives you so much confidence that you're on to a winner, Professor?
Well, there are several indicators that this could be a very useful vaccine. One is, of course, that it's simply a single dose. Many of the other vaccines that are being developed will need 2 doses or maybe even 3 that will take months to administer. So this is much more suitable for this sort of pandemic situation. Secondly, this type of vaccine technology has been used in thousands of people before where it's been safe. So we would anticipate that it will be safe again as a COVID vaccine. And very importantly, there is a way of scaling up the manufacture of this vaccine, not just in Europe, but with partners around the world, to make sure that we can manufacture, as you say, hundreds of millions of doses. And one of our main partners helping in this work is an Indian company, the Serum Institute of India, who we are working closely with to try and really scale up to very large numbers of doses.
Now, I don't really understand the nuances of vaccination, but what I'm keen on understanding from you is how did you get a vaccine ready to so soon? You were apparently working on a disease X, which was a bit like COVID-19, but not quite, more like SARS and MERS, and then you've repurposed what you were working on and got it ready to deal with coronavirus. How do you know this works?
Yes, the way this vaccine works is we take a safe, inactivated vaccine that doesn't cause any harm, and we take out some of its genes. It's actually a common cold virus. And we put in the key gene from the COVID-19 SARS virus. So we only have to insert one gene, but it's the most relevant one, the same part of the virus everybody else is using. But what we know is that this particular vaccine technology gives very strong immune responses with just a single dose. That's been tested in humans many times before. And we now have animal data that look very encouraging indeed, showing that we get the right type of immunity, strong antibody responses, good T-cell responses that are associated with protection against many viral infections. So that's the reason for being confident that it might well work, but we really have to go and show that in the clinic.
So while we've got our fingers crossed and we're hoping that this vaccine is indeed ready as early as September. I'm also concerned about the downside risks. What, according to you, could potentially go wrong which prevents your vaccine from being a success, Professor?
So there are several risks with any vaccine trial, that the vaccine might not be safe. As I said, that we hope is pretty unlikely. We need to get good immune responses, and we've seen that with this platform before, so the risk there is low. Probably the biggest risk is that the incidence of COVID is dropping pretty rapidly in the UK at the moment, and there might simply not be enough cases in the trial subjects to show that the vaccine is working. So if that does turn out to be the case and we don't get a result by, say, August, we will have to look elsewhere for other trial sites where the incidence is then much higher. And of course, this varies over time. So we need to be lucky in the clinical trial sites we choose, and we need to choose wisely so that we get enough episodes of COVID in the control group to have statistical power to show that the vaccine really works and how well it works. So that's one of our major concerns at the moment, that we may not have enough episodes of disease, even with thousands of vaccinees, to show conclusively that the vaccine is working very well.
Adar Poonawalla, Professor Hill sounds very confident. Give our viewers a sense of the preparations you've made at the Serum Institute to be able to take this vaccine to market at scale for our entire country, if by September you know that this vaccine does indeed work.
Well, Rahul, our team members, Dr. Shaligram at the Serum Institute has been working closely with Dr. Hill, and we've worked out that in about 2 weeks' time, we should be able to produce at the rate of 5 million doses a month, and then scale that up to 10 million doses a month after about 6 months. So I think if we start with regulatory approvals in place, which is moving very well, and I must thank the Indian regulatory authorities for helping us a lot in this, we're planning in about 2 to 3 weeks' time to start producing about 5 million doses a month. And I've put aside certain other commercially interesting vaccines which were being produced in that area in the situation that we're in, and we haven't even got any funding for this. We're funding this internally, and I took a decision just a few days ago to do that, and hopefully we'll get some more partners to help us along the way.
How confident are you? You understand vaccines better than most people. How confident are you that we could be on to a winner? Because there are more than 4 dozen different kinds of vaccines that are currently in the pipeline. 4 of them have human trials that have already started. How do we know? Because they're saying they'll have it ready by September. Companies like Moderna in the United States, even the Chinese army and their virologists are saying they'll take 12 to 18 months. How do we know by September we could have a vaccine? Adar.
Well, Rahul, I can't speak for all the others who are trying all these other experimental technologies on RNA and various other things. All I can say is that the scientists at the Oxford University are some of the best in the world. We've actually partnered with them for a malaria vaccine project in the past as well. And I have a lot of faith that if anyone succeeds, I'm sure the scientists at Oxford, Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Hill, will certainly succeed. And that's why we're taking this risk of manufacturing this vaccine candidate over any other vaccine candidate that we've got, 3-4 other partnerships with.
Professor Hill, in your view, if everything goes as per plan, by when will people in India and globally have access to your very crucial vaccine? Professor Hill?
Well, we're aiming for providing, as you said at the start, hundreds of millions of doses with our partners across the world at major manufacturing facilities by Q4 of this year. So we're hoping to be able to provide a lot of people with a lot of doses by that time. But a word of caution, a lot of things really have to go right for that to happen, both on the clinical trial side and in terms of vaccine scale-up and manufacturing.
Adar, what's your best case scenario and your most likely scenario for bringing this vaccine to the market? If there are people who are watching and saying, okay, that's the man, that's the vaccine, how do we get it? By when will they actually get it?
I think it's very difficult to guess at this stage. It's impossible, actually. But best case scenario, by the end of this year, if the vaccine works, then yes, we'll have a few million doses prepared. Worst case scenario, it may go on till the end of next year. As Dr. Hill said, to demonstrate that a vaccine is truly efficacious, you need that many cases in your clinical trial that is a controlled double-blinded study to show up. And if cases are on the decline, then that's going to prove difficult, or the trial may even get extended. So I think that's what we need to really look at, and taking any guesses beyond that right now is not accurate.
I'll leave it over there. Professor Adriene Hill, we can only wish you all the best. You know, we don't know. Other, tell me, how much money is at stake? I mean, this vaccine, is it like this billion-dollar race amongst all the companies about who gets? There's a lot of prestige and stake, of course. But how much money would be at stake globally for whoever gets the first vaccine?
Well, look, I can't speak on Big Pharma's behalf and the listed companies who will certainly try and patent it and charge a fair amount. But I think given the situation, I've publicly announced this, that we won't be patenting any of the vaccines that we're developing, and I hope that others don't, and enter into partnerships with others to manufacture this product across the board, even on a royalty basis. And because, you know, this is not a time to make money. I think this is a time to address a huge public health crisis, and we should make it affordable and accessible to as many people as possible, especially in the underprivileged countries who need it the most.
Well, Professor Hill, we wish you all the best. We'll track the human trials very, very closely, more closely than any vaccine trial has ever been tracked. And once you're set to go, then we'll track what Adar and his team at Serum Institute do to raise it to scale. He says it'll take a few weeks to take it up to about 10 million doses. That's the kind of speed and momentum we need to see. Thank you very much, Professor Hill. This was Adriene Hill's first interview to an Indian television channel. We're delighted he spoke to India today. Thanks, Adar. We hope to have you back as we keep tracking the race for the first human vaccine. I want to walk across now to the India Today Data Intelligence Unit's Corona India dashboard. We made some interesting additions which add a lot of granularity to what we've been showing you in India's battle against the coronavirus. So I want to introduce now the India heat map. This is the coronavirus heat map, which shows you, can we just come in as close as we possibly can, so you can see this up close and as closely as you possibly can. So at this moment, marked out in dark red are the 123 districts of India which are hotspots with large outbreak concentrated largely around Maharashtra, some parts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, the entire national capital region, and in parts of Rajasthan. Now there are 47 in this neon green kind of color, 47 hotspot districts which have clusters. So there are some in Gujarat, there are some in parts of Maharashtra. So these are scattered all over. Then there are 207 non-hotspot districts with clusters where the intensity of the outbreak is lesser. The best news though is that about almost half of India, still 350 districts marked out here in green, are districts with no coronavirus cases. I shouldn't be touching this dashboard actually, after what Ian Lipkin said on Newstrack. But so 350 districts in Orissa, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, large parts of Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, the northeast are districts which aren't infected with coronavirus, and thank God for that, and I hope that's the way it stays. So that was our new India heat map. This is the list of new cases which tells you where are the maximum number of new cases coming from. The maximum number of new cases have largely been coming out of Maharashtra. For a while they started coming out of Madhya Pradesh, then suddenly Madhya Pradesh numbers showed a big fall. At this moment, this is the latest data that we have. Maharashtra on the 21st of April had 552 new cases. The number one state with the most number of cases. Gujarat had 239 cases. Uttar Pradesh had 110. So far and away, Maharashtra has the maximum number of coronavirus cases on a daily basis. Here is the trajectory tracker. Now the trajectory tracker, and again want our producers to come in really close, shows you which states, this dotted white line shows you which are the states where the cases are growing, doubling every 2 days. This white dotted line shows you where cases are doubling every 3 days. This dotted line gives you a sense of where cases are doubling every week. So most of India at this time is less than doubling 1 week, which means that we're in a good spot where cases are not doubling too fast. The regions where cases are growing really fast at this moment are Gujarat, where there are now 2,178 cases. That's the line which has the sharpest incline, so that's the area of concern. Number 2 is Maharashtra, and then there is Delhi. So those are the 3 areas of greatest concern. I want to show you the global tracker. Here's the global big picture in the battle against the coronavirus. 2.5 million confirmed cases, 1,78,000 deaths, 6,95,000 recoveries, and it is still the United States which is the most impacted by the coronavirus. Far and away, if you look at the number of cases, and this chart will really bring it out, the United States now has a problem which is way more dangerous than anywhere else. And what we're seeing, in fact, in the US is a big backlash with Republican supporters coming out against Democrat governors, and that's creating all manner of complications of its own. So they don't have a coherent national strategy like we do in India. For the large part, there's been one mission, one purpose to deal with the virus. That's not been the case in the United States, as a result of which, in the US, you've got 8,23,786 cases. In India, there are only 20,080. Who would have thought 1 month ago that India would be at 20,080, the United States at 8,23,000? I don't want to jinx it. Knock on wood, I hope this is the way it stays. Not that we wish ill to the US, but we hope that this is where India stays, as low is possible. I want to shift our attention to the other story we're tracking on the Newstrack tonight. The government had a cabinet meeting today where they've approved a new strong law which has very stern punishment to those who attack healthcare workers. Now, there have been multiple instances over the last several days of frontline healthcare workers being attacked by people for no good reason. There never is a good reason, but some of the reasons that they've been attacked for is completely unacceptable. So the government met today and announced that there will be very serious, cognizable, non-bailable provisions with rigorous imprisonment in them if there's anyone who lays a hand on a medical worker. Here's our report.
After unending attacks on healthcare professionals who are on the front line in the war against coronavirus, the centre has finally stepped in to shield the heroes. The Narendra Modi government has introduced an ordinance to punish those who attack, harass or stigmatize healthcare professionals.
Approved promulgation of an ordinance to amend the Epidemic Diseases Act 1897 in the light of pandemic situation of COVID-19. So be it harassment or be it criminal offense against them in form of violence, for this government, that's a zero tolerance area.
The amendments in the Epidemic Diseases Act of 1987 make any attack on healthcare workers a cognizable and non-bailable offence. The probe into such attacks must be completed in 30 days. A judgment will come in 1 year. The guilty will face 3 months to 5 years in jail and a fine of 50,000 to 2 lakh rupees. In case of grievous injuries, the punishment ranges from 6 months to 7 years with a penalty of 1 lakh to 5 lakh rupees. In case of attack on healthcare workers' vehicle or clinic, the guilty will have to pay double the damage. Doctors have welcomed the move.
Yeah, this is needful. This is the need of hour to minimize such incidents, or at least create maximum deterrence, you know.
शायद काफी लंबे समय से लोग ऐसा सोच भी रहे थे, मांग रहे थे कि सरकार ने जो इस प्रकार का प्रावधान किया है या सरकार बहुत जल्दी इस प्रावधान को ला रही है, तो एक अच्छा प्रावधान है। इसके माध्यम से ही सही शायद जो लोग ऐसा कार्य कर रहे हैं, घृणित कार्य कर रहे हैं, उन पर शायद कहीं तक लगाम लग जाए, और अगर कहीं किसी व्यक्ति की, चाहे स्वास्थ्य कर्मी की, चाहे पुलिस कर्मी की क्षतिपूर्ति होती है।
The centre's big move came hours after doctors held talks with Home Minister Amit Shah and Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan. The Home Ministry has written to states asking them to ensure adequate security for healthcare professionals.
After the Home Minister personally assured the medical fraternity today that the government will do everything in order to keep them safe. The centre today promulgated an ordinance which makes it a cognizable and a non-bailable offence to attack or harass a medical professional. The medical fraternity, of course, has welcomed the move, but what remains to be seen is whether this changes attitudes of the citizens on the ground, and they, of course, respect our corona warriors who are putting themselves in harm's way every day in order to keep us safe. With camera person Sanjay Chaudhary, Polami Saha in Delhi for India Today.
The battle against the coronavirus is a global fight. This is not a virus that knows any boundary. This is where the entire world comes together as one to fight this invisible enemy. And what we've been trying to do on India Today is to bring you some of the global practitioners who are at the forefront of this fight. We've had Ian Lipkin on our show this week. I am delighted and privileged to introduce to you Dr. Richard Horton. He is the editor-in-chief of the world-renowned medical journal Lancet. It is Lancet's seal of authenticity, which really gives a sense of credibility to a medical research paper. And there are so many theories we've been hearing. Some of them are researched thoroughly and are deep science. Some of it is just completely bogus. And what I hope over the next half hour Professor Horton can do is to help separate real science from what is straight out of WhatsApp University. So I first want to show you the work that Professor Horton and his team at the Lancet Journal are doing, some of the new research papers they've come up with, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions in your mind as well about all the new studies that are coming out from world over and which of those studies carry some meaning and some real purpose. So we'll talk to Professor Horton in just a moment. Take a look at this report.
The world listens to the Lancet, the most respected medical journal on earth with a reputation for documenting the history of medicine. And in the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the Lancet that millions are turning to for sense. Richard Horton is the editor-in-chief of Lancet. The world's most cutting-edge, deeply researched medical studies end up on his desk. If a new medical finding has Lancet's seal of approval, it attains almost instant authenticity. In the wake of the coronavirus outbreak, he and his team have been at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19, publishing research on the new virus and the ways to tackle it. Called the coronavirus prophet, Horton is the most formidable voices on the contagion. He has called the global response to COVID-19 outbreak the greatest science policy failure in a generation, saying that warnings of doctors and scientists were ignored with fatal results.
The standard public health approach to an epidemic is you, yes, test, you isolate, you quarantine, you contact trace, you chase down every single contact and test that person too to see if you can stop the lines of transmission. And that's the way you stop the outbreak.
He's also been a very vocal critic of UK's handling of the pandemic.
We knew in the last week of January that this was coming. The message from China was absolutely clear. And then we wasted February when we could have acted.
Richard Horton also describes Donald Trump's move to end WHO funding a crime against humanity. He's a council member of both the United Kingdom's Academy of Medical Sciences and the University of Birmingham, and is a senior associate of the UK health policy think tank, the Nuffield Trust. The world now is keenly listening to every word of this leading doctor. Bureau Report, India Today.
Editor-in-chief of the Lancet Medical Journal, Richard Horton, welcome to India Today. I want to start by asking you about your view on the global fight against the coronavirus at this moment. Do you think we are nearing the peak? Are we around the peak, or is there much worse still to come?
Well, thank you very much for having me. The situation for the pandemic is different in different parts of the world. But if I had to give an overall judgment of the situation, I would say we are still in a position of extreme danger. Although the epidemic has receded from Wuhan and Chinese people are returning to a normal life, in the United Kingdom, we're very much at the peak of the epidemic, as we are seeing in some other parts of Europe. And if we look around the rest of the world, we don't know what's going to happen in Latin America or sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, in India, you are also fighting against this invisible enemy, as you rightly call it. And we need to be extremely vigilant and consider it with great respect.
What do you make of all the research papers that are landing on your desk as editor-in-chief of the Lancet Medical Journal? What research into the coronavirus do you think holds the greatest promise when it comes to finding a solution or a possible vaccine?
Now, that's a great question. And of course, we're all hoping that a vaccine can be discovered and manufactured and produced very, very quickly. But we're not going to have that vaccine for a considerable time. And so we need something else to get out of the lockdowns that our countries are in. And the only way to get out of the lockdown is that as the peak of the epidemic starts to decline, then what we need to do is to test as many people as possible to keep the reproduction of the virus as low as possible. And if you are tested positive, then you are isolated, and then you do what you're doing in India, this cluster containment approach, where you're identifying an individual, you're contact tracing those who they've been in contact with, and you isolate and quarantine the individuals and those areas. That is the only way that you're going to sustainably exit the lockdown that we are all facing.
Dr. Horton, you just said that it will take a lot of time for the first vaccine to come out. We heard from Professor Adriene Hill at Oxford University, who believes that by September they'll have a vaccine that's cleared all human trials, and by December the vaccine will be in India. As the editor-in-chief of Lancet, do you think there is promise to that claim?
Well, that is the best case scenario that you've just articulated. I will keep my fingers crossed that that is what happens. At the moment in the United Kingdom, there are 2 vaccine candidates that are soon to enter trials. And let us hope that one of those 2 vaccines is successful. But the honest answer is we don't know. And science is a very uncertain kind of discipline, and we may have a vaccine by December, but we may not. And that is why I'm saying that the way we now have changed our lives, physical distancing, wearing masks, working from home, these changes to our lifestyle, they're not suddenly going to go away even when we have a vaccine. I think we are going to see some long-lasting impacts on our society and how we interact with one another.
You said the key right now is test. In India, we imported a lot of rapid body tests from China, as has been the case in several other countries. A lot of those tests didn't give the desired results, and now we put those rapid tests on hold. So if we have to test, what do you make of all these Chinese tests which are misfiring, and then countries are saying we don't want them, and as a result of which we made this effort, we delivered them to all our states, now we can't use them?
No, you're right. I mean, when we say test, which test? And does the test work? That's exactly right. And I'm afraid we did the same. In the United Kingdom, we bought antibody tests and I think we spent something like £20 million on them, and they don't work. And now we're going to have to throw them away. The testing that we need to do actually is not the antibody testing, though. The testing is to see whether you actually have virus in you, to see whether you're infected. Not to see whether you've had the infection, that's the antibody test, but to actually see whether you have the infection now. Because if you have the infection now, that's the time when you need to be isolated, and you need to then quickly find your contacts and isolate and quarantine them. So those tests we do have. The challenge there is that for those tests, you do need to have laboratory capacity. And that's going to be the big difficulty for countries. Do they have the laboratory capacity to be able to do the volume of tests that's necessary to make the diagnosis?
One of the problems we have in India, Professor Horton, is with asymptomatic people, and that's the case globally. The Indian Council of Medical Research said 80% of the carriers at this moment aren't showing any symptoms to suggest that they are COVID-19 positive. How do you suggest a country like India deal with that situation?
Yeah, you've put your finger on one of the mysteries and uncertainties of this whole pandemic. And actually, it's great you asked me, because we have not been discussing this enough in the United Kingdom, and it's a really urgent issue. I mean, it's not clear exactly what the proportion of asymptomatics is, and it might be different at different age groups. So, for example, children who we have so far not thought have had serious illness, well, it may be that they haven't had serious illness, but they have got the infection, but they just don't realize they've got it. Now, if that's the case, if we have a large number of asymptomatics amongst children, then it's going to be very challenging there to isolate children, and then we're going to have difficult questions to ask about when we let children go back to school. Because if they go back to school, we need to make sure that they are tested so that they're not passing on infection to each other or to their teachers or to their parents and other family members. So this is a really serious difficulty. What we need to do, I would say there are two particular groups we need to focus on. We need to test children, and we also need to test healthcare workers. It's our healthcare workers who are on the front lines of defending society. And our healthcare workers could be very much exposed to the virus. They could be asymptomatic, and we need to be testing our healthcare workers at least every week to make sure that they don't have the infection.
Many who are watching you at this moment in India today are anxious about children. I have a 4-year-old son. Will he be able to go to school this year, or do you think the whole year is written off? What about college? What about university? The people who are paying big money to send their children to good schools, good colleges, good universities, and now they're wondering, is virtual education even worth it, or should they just drop a year, resume next year? What's your best sense, Professor?
I understand. I have a 19-year-old daughter, and she's had her first year at university terminated early because of her university has closed down. So I absolutely share your anxiety. Look, let's be positive about this. The epidemic in each country isn't going to go on forever. It will burn itself out if we go into lockdown. Our countries are doing the right things to control the outbreak. So as the epidemic declines, in my country, that's going to be the end of May, early June. If the lockdown is successful in India, you could see the decline in the epidemic over around a 10-week time course. If at the end of that 10 weeks or so the epidemic is over, then people are going to be able to begin to resume normal life. Not exactly normal. I think we're still going to have physical distancing. We might have to wear masks in the street. We're certainly going to have to wash our hands more and pay attention to personal hygiene more. But I think in that situation, we are going to see normal life resuming, and with increasing test capacity and quickly isolating people with symptoms, that then I think will mean that we can send our children back to school. But what it will also mean is in school, things are going to have to change. You won't be able to have schools with classrooms where children are sitting next to each other very closely. I think you'll need to have classrooms where children are sitting further away from one another, and we will have to have those physical distancing measures available in schools.
But in a lot of places in countries like India, that's just physically not possible, whether it's the slums or one of our municipal schools, even in big private schools. How do you suddenly create extra capacity so that you have half the number of children you would ordinarily, and especially in places like Dharavi, which is one of the world's biggest slums? There are 8 or 10 people living in one room, one very small room. So how do you implement the idea of physical distancing when that's physically not possible?
I understand. I think in a situation like that, you've got to wait until the epidemic has burnt itself out, as I say, at the end of that 10-week period after lockdown. And then the only other things that you can do are face masks, very careful attention to personal hygiene, hand washing, For example, cough etiquette, making sure that you cough into your shoulder. If you use tissues, then you dispose of those tissues immediately. These are the only things, in the absence of a vaccine, these are the only things that one can do to reduce the risk of contracting the virus. There's nothing else available until we have a vaccine.
Oxford University published a study which said India has the most stringent lockdown in the world. Lockdown 2.0 gets over in a few days from now. What's your view, Professor Houghton? How should a country like India assess the question of re-entry? What's our best strategy in your view?
You mean the virus coming back into the country?
No, yes. I'm saying once the lockdown gets over towards the first part of May, on the 3rd of May, how should we approach the issue of re-entry? There are enough and more people who are watching you at this time in key positions in government, outside. They're getting restless. They're saying we've been locked up forever. Now we need to get back, start our factories. Life has to resume. We can't be in hiding from this virus forever. What should India's post-lockdown strategy be, Professor?
Right. So first of all, I understand that everybody wants to get back to normal. I understand we want to resume our economic activity. But please, please, I really urge you, don't rush this, because if you rush going back to work, if you rush lifting the lockdown and you have a second wave of the infection, then that could be even worse than the first wave. So, and then it's going to cost, you're going to have to go all the way back to the very beginning of your lockdown. So you've invested so much time and effort in your current lockdown. Don't waste that time and effort that you've invested. Keep going with it as much as you possibly can until the end of a 10-week period. And then... So
you're saying the lockdown should be 10 weeks starting from the day that it started?
Absolutely.
Why? Why can't it be a shorter lockdown? We've been locked down for about 40 odd days. Why is that not enough?
It's not enough to control the epidemic. If you look at the evidence from Wuhan locked down in the way that China did its lockdown, in other words, very aggressively, on January the 23rd. On January the 23rd, they locked down, and for 10 weeks until the early part of April, they stayed locked down and they extinguished transmission of the virus. And now they're returning to normal. And all of the epidemiological modeling showed that they needed to stay locked down for around 10 weeks. That's going to be the same in other settings as well, because that's the nature of the virus. The virus spreads. It's an aggressive virus. It will spread rapidly in a population if you don't physically distance. So
but I could counter-argue, I don't understand epidemiology, but just looking at it from the outside, I could counter-argue that when, at the end of the 10-week period, you reopen the country, what stops the virus from spreading then?
Well, then what you've got, the virus then is not spreading because very few people have the infection. The virus will spread rapidly when you have lots of people with the infection interacting with lots more people. If we've all been staying in our homes, we haven't been mixing with people because we've been locked down, then there's no opportunity to spread the infection. So what we'll do at the end of 10 weeks is there'll be a very low level of infection, very low level indeed, and so there's no opportunity for it to spread again if we go back to work and go back to school at a very slow rate, and if we do this testing and contact tracing. That's really, really important. The testing and contact tracing is really, really key to the success after the lockdown.
What's your view on the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine? President Trump seems to be a big aficionado. He's asking the Indian government to provide him with HCQ. There's a new report in the New England Medical Journal which says that HCQ doesn't work. In fact, it could increase the possibility of mortality. What's the Lancet view on the use of HCQ?
The Lancet view, my view anyway, is that there's not one piece of evidence to support its use, and it's highly irresponsible for anybody, particularly a political leader, to suggest otherwise. Indeed, taking a drug that does not have any proof that it works or that it's safe when taken amongst such a large population is highly dangerous. So as a physician myself, I strongly advise against taking this drug until we have reliable evidence.
Professor Richard Horton, I have dozens of more questions for you, as I'm sure most of our viewers do, but I'm out of time on this broadcast. But I want to leave by extracting a promise from you that you'll come back again on India Today and share your thoughts, because this is a constantly evolving situation. So as more research lands up on your desk, you go through how authentic that seems to you. I do hope, Richard Horton, you can come back and share your insights with us. It's been an absolute privilege listening to you. We've had so many people speak, but you've been able to add a level of clarity backed by the most authentic research that you're looking at. Thank you so much, Professor Horton.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Are you going to come back again?
Of course, anytime.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you. We're done with the Newstrack tonight. I hope you enjoyed our power-packed broadcast. I look forward to seeing you at 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. Rajdeep Sardesai comes up with News Today on the other side. Stay with us. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.